Welcome to another video by your friend Matthew Shirley. I want to start off by saying that I haven't made a video like this in a while. Any of the kind of miscellaneous videos that I've been making in the last few months have been tarot videos, and I've only made a few of those. I've been doing my podcast semi-regularly, but not as regularly as I would like. But I do have several different playlists on this channel. One is the podcast, the Infinite Weird Podcast, and I've been lucky the last several episodes to have gotten some amazing people to talk to, including Matthew Siegel, who is one of my favorite scholars of Alfred North Whitehead. Matt Siegel he wrote a book called The Physics of the World Soul, which is really good, and he's got a lot of YouTube content and a lot of stuff on his website. His website is Footnotes to Plato. That's the name of his YouTube channel as well. Footnotes to the number 2 Plato. So check him out. And I got John Cobb on my podcast as well recently. John Cobb is a legend. He has published over 50 books, I think. And he's also a Whiteheadian scholar. So yeah, I've been dipping pretty hard into the process world. I got Catherine Keller as well on the podcast recently. That was the most recent one. She's fantastic, and it was really nice to talk to her. But so tonight I've been rewatching some of my old videos, and it gave me all sorts of feelings. It made me feel happy that I had made videos on my, about my thoughts on philosophy and spirituality. It kind of highlighted similarities and differences between how I thought then and how I think now. A lot of these videos I was watching were made a year and a half, 2 years ago. For the most part, I'm kind of spiritually in the same boat, I would say, with most of what I said on those videos. But I really enjoy making videos like this. I enjoy the process of doing it. I enjoy the possibility that someone who thinks about some of the same stuff or is drawn to some of the same stuff or interested and curious about some of the topics that I'm curious about, might stumble upon one or more of these videos and feel resonant with them, in the ways that I do when I find videos like that. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of ego involved for sure in that way. But that's just one dimension of it, because ultimately it's good for my mental health to make this kind of stuff, I think. Because I'm someone who loves to communicate information and stories and knowledge and wisdom that I have absorbed and integrated into my life. There's little more that makes me more fulfilled or excited than having conversations with people about topics that I'm genuinely interested in. And that's why I love teaching. I teach English composition at a community college, and I teach at an after-school program for elementary school kids. And I love teaching. I love dialoguing. I love making this sort of content. I love interviewing people on my podcast. I love language, and I love conversation and dialectic. And I like, I'm one characteristic that I have been reminded of today, reminded of in the last several days, but then kind of doubly reminded as I was watching my videos. For some reason, for various reasons, I am drawn to communication styles that are less scripted and more organic and more informal and casual in a sense. I mean, I think so. For example, like, the poetry that I like the most is the poetry that feels kind of the most raw and not the, in some ways the least formal. I don't like hyper formal poetry, but of course the word form is relative, and even avant-garde or experimental poetry and art has, it kind of creates its own forms or whatever, right? So there's always form of some sort, but I just I kind of like I'm drawn to the really deep questions about being alive. So I'm drawn to the same questions that philosophy is drawn to, religion is drawn to, politics, ethics, aesthetics, any field that's trying to address the big stuff in one way or another. So I'm drawn to academia because of that. Like, I just love to learn new things, right? I love to learn more about everything. But then simultaneously, and I'm sure there's so many things that play into this, not the least of which is the fact that for me personally, I didn't care about school. I wasn't a reader. I wasn't like a researcher or anything like that for the first 18 years of my life. I mean, toward hip hop and a couple other things, music mainly, things related to music, I kind of had that devoted curiosity and engagement. But yeah, once I turned 19 or so, I started becoming a lot more curious about more topics, and I became a bigger reader, and I started to kind of enjoy taking classes, and then that eventually led me to encounter certain professors in college that really inspired me and knew a lot more about the stuff I was interested in than I did. And then they also, saw some passion or potential within me where they challenged me and they pushed me, and that was great. And all of that plays into why I became a teacher myself and all that. But I guess the main point I'm trying to make with this is that I really desire and yearn for and want to practice myself kind of this, in some ways maybe a carryover from like the oral tradition, which is kind of more natural and direct and kind of, yeah, less calculated, just kind of on the spot, in the moment type of communication. And related to that, or, kind of in that same family for me is that I would rather read a book of, and maybe this is because maybe it's because I'm just not very smart, and that's fine. Like, not very smart in the sense that maybe my brain just doesn't connect well with like super technical information. I think that's true, actually. And so that's another factor. But all these various factors make me somebody who values not only kind of that like natural on the spot type of direct communication, rather than super calculated communication, but also like, I would rather read a book about quantum physics by somebody who, like, a book that's more accessible and that's kind of like more in common language, than a book about quantum physics by some extremely abstract and hard to understand scientist. That's just one example that comes to mind right now. But so related to all that, it's like with these videos that I make, sometimes I get into some pretty heavy and deep topics, but like these are things that I kind of like wrestle with just in my mundane life, It's not some removed thing for me. It's not like, if something like remains kind of disembodied and just removed and abstract, where it doesn't feel connected to just kind of like simple moment to moment experience of interacting with other people and interacting with our environments and just kind of dealing with the daily responsibilities and just our contact with the tangible world and, the beautiful and ugly parts of that. Like, if it's not connected to that, then it doesn't really excite me. If it's not connected to that, it doesn't really excite me. So, as a teacher and as a writer and as like when I make content like this, I hope that people can see that. And I'm sure maybe I'm deluding myself. Maybe I'm trying to overcompensate. Like maybe I'm saying all this to overcompensate for the fact that I do struggle with being overly abstract or something. So I think there's truth to that as well. It's the big, massive, complicated thing, right? But with all of that said, I wanted to like make a follow-up part 2 video on pantheism versus panentheism. I made a video at least 2 years ago about this, and I watched it tonight, and it's still like kind of an issue that I think about a lot. And I know that sounds nerdy, watching my videos tonight made me realize that I dropped certain terms without like kind of explaining what they mean and explaining the context, which I think it would be more useful to always explain that rather than assume that the viewer knows what I'm talking about, and that's related to what the point I was just making a minute ago. But yeah, just to clarify, all of this is on that first video, but you may not watch that, and that's fine. So, pantheism is the view that reality itself is God, or the universe itself is God, or the cosmos itself is God, aka there is nothing outside of God, aka the world or the cosmos is identical to God. That is essentially what pantheism is. And as I expressed in the video a couple years ago, my own kind of theism or whatever, right? My own spirituality falls somewhere between pantheism and panentheism, depending on how we frame that. But let's just take a little bit more time unpacking pantheism, or I'll spend a little bit more time, because I think some people that, like maybe some theists that hate on pantheism, they think it's too restricted. They think it's too limited, because they kind of equate it as something similar to like materialism or physicalism, right? Where they're like, how can you confine God to the physical universe or something, basically, right? That's one criticism of pantheism from like the pantheistic side. And so I'd like to address that for a second. As I said in that first video, to me, reality is not just physical. I mean, it's kind of obvious. Like, it's obvious to me, or it feels obvious, that reality includes the physical world, the tangible world, and the world that we experience with our senses and sensory experience and all that, right? Of course. But reality also includes things that are not tangible. I mean, they affect what's tangible. So, for example, our thoughts, our memories, the fact that like a cow can be born and land on the ground and like walk, because most animals other than humans are more developed. Not all, of course, right? But like there are lots of animals that are way more developed than humans when they're born into the world, and they already kind of like come equipped with certain information and knowledge and capabilities and all that stuff. So to me, that's like some sort of retainment and transference of non-physical information or something that allows them to carry that over, if that makes sense. And obviously we could get super technical about that, and certain like physicalists or whatever could argue that all of that is still physical somehow. It just seems obvious to me that there's components of reality that are not physical. And so I guess my point with that is that, to me, pantheism is not saying that God is confined to the physical universe. Pantheism is just saying that God is everything that exists. And to me, everything that exists includes everything that exists, including archetypes and energy and non-physical things and physical things and everything that exists. And like, so hopefully that makes sense. Everything that exists is way more than just like a materialist conception of reality, in my opinion. And so framing it that way makes me feel way more comfortable considering myself a pantheist. So then we have panentheism, which is the view that the world or the cosmos or the universe or reality is in God. And so the idea is that in pantheism, God is entirely immanent, and in panentheism, God is both immanent and transcendent. If the cosmos or reality exists in God, that's saying that reality is not separate from God, but God somehow transcends reality while permeating reality. So I totally dig that in a lot of ways. I mean, some of the stuff I was saying about pantheism kind of connects to certain views of panentheism, I guess, because I was saying that like all that exists, all that is, transcends, so to speak, like the physical world, for example. So the ways that resonate with me the most when I think about panentheism is that reality itself transcends itself, if that makes sense. Like there's always novelty. New things are always being created, new relationships, new growth, new change. Reality is dynamic, and reality is in flux. And so, in that way, from my pantheist side of that, I would say, well, yeah, all that is includes flux, change, dynamism. That is reality. So it's not separate from reality. That is reality. Novelty. Reality is novel. And from a panentheist side, you could use the word transcend, I guess, and to describe that, which is reality is constantly transcending its past incarnation or its past iteration because it's never staying the same. And one way to account for that mysterious unfolding of newness or novelty is, you could say, that's transcendent. And as I said in the first video about this, obviously reality, the totality of reality and, being itself, right? Being itself to me doesn't have a beginning or ending. And so, just kind of think about that for a second. Like being itself, like the seemingly infinite and expanding cosmos all of it is being itself. It exists. So so with panentheism, every single thing, right? Every finite thing, everything that's kind of in space-time, everything that changes and is, everything that's born and changes and decays and dies, like, not all of those single finite things are reality. Obviously, they are divine in my view. But being itself transcends each of those finite things, because being is infinite. And so in that way, reality, or God, is transcendent because it transcends each individual finite thing. And it also transcends all of our words or maps or concepts or symbols, or definitions that we place on top of it, because it never can be kind of confined to one thing like that too in language. And so in that way it's transcendent. And so, in a lot of ways I'm kind of left in a similar space as I was when I first made the video about this. But I just wanted to follow up and add a few details that I didn't mention in the first video, and, kind of spend time at the beginning of this video just unpacking a few things that I unpacked. And, I guess I'll just end by saying that if you enjoyed this, go check out other videos in the playlist called Thoughts on Philosophy and Spirituality. If you're interested in anything related to tarot or tarot itself, I have a series called the Tarot Series that you should check out. And, I want to just reiterate that I worked all day like usual during the week, right? And it's so easy to get home from work and just kind of feel lazy and drained and unmotivated and not use my time as wisely as I could. And, obviously realizing that balance is key. It's fine to have leisure. It's fine not to be like go, go, go all the time. It's fine not to be haunted by, the fear that I'm not doing enough or whatever, right? So it's good to let go of that stuff when healthy, but it's also good to like snap out of that laziness and just continue to practice a certain agency and responsibility and discipline that leads me to make a video like this, because I feel like I've been kind of struggling psychologically and emotionally a little bit, and I've been feeling a little off point and decentered, and I really wanted to make a point of making this video just for the hell of it, if nothing else. And I hope to stay on the ball with continuing this Thoughts on Spirituality and Philosophy series. So until next time, peace out, take care of yourselves, bye.